Welcome to the DonDiva Coaching Blog Talk Radio Show. And our last session was one part of two parts of a mini session about divorcing and why you should divorce. And then we're going to take the second session to go into reasons for divorce. And this is fairly good on that and why I do divorce coaching and whatnot, and why there are reasons for divorce when it comes to kids and also the parents as well. And we left off on, encouraging you guys for your mental health to do so, and that's another reason. When your spouse, or if you're in a long-term relationship that's becoming emotionally unhealthy, mentally unhealthy, and behaviorally unhealthy for yourself, and you're finding yourself reacting, or you're at a level of complete total animosity, levels and depths of complete and total tire anarchy, or War of the Roses, hatred towards your spouse for all the reckless behavior, or the levels of wanting to provoke you or elicit a level of behavior you don't normally have, or personality that you normally don't display, but because you're dealing with them on a constant basis, their immaturity, their childishness, their levels of trying to get insidiously underneath your skin cause levels of reaction that you normally don't have, and enjoys getting off on that. So when you find you're constantly testing how far you can push someone, or before it completely shatters that person's emotional health, mental health, behavioral health, and they're eliciting responses that they normally don't have, it's best to leave them, because that's how you end up with the shows Snap, First 48, ID Channel, Fatal Vows, Fatal Attraction, Fatal Obsession. And nobody wants to actually get to the level of fatal vows, fatal attraction, fatal obsession. For me, I was never obsessed. It was never a fatal attraction on my part. And it was never a point of feeling like fatal vows or being with someone where, how Betty Broderick was with her husband, where she got to the point that she killed him because he had a narc by proxy wife, and the wife kept agonizing her, aggravating her, on top of the husband, who would continue to aggravate, agitate, elicit levels of hostility, use the kids, parental alienate, provoke, gaslight, and do things like that. And then subconsciously, she may have wanted to end things at that point. And when you're dealing with economic and financial abuse, coercive control, or emotional abuse, and you're dealing with a narc by proxy, and you're dealing with a low-key American monster who's walking around here with all the accolades, all the money, all the finances, controlling how you take care of the kids, or controlling how people see you, it can do levels and depths of emotional permanent scarring, harm, and levels and depths of animosity that a person normally wouldn't have. And at the end of the day, nobody in their right mind wants to deal with that long-term, or deal offboarding from a relationship like that. And honestly, it's not healthy for the person who's being the subject of it, or the person who has to be at that point the target of all the obsession or aggravation, degradation, humiliation, or levels and depths of stress that a narc or narcs by proxy, or what I call flying monkeys, will do to a person on the behalf of a narc, or a wealthy narc, or what I call comfortable narc who has good finances, good job, but is not wealthy, but has the ability to cause levels and depths of financial stress, strain, or aggravation, provoking, and gaslighting, where you're seeing reactive abuse syndrome, reacting angrily, hostile, and things like that. And they will elicit your neighbors, they will elicit your community to provoke, aggravate, and gaslight you, especially if the community is benefiting, or maybe your neighbors are benefiting from them, or they're playing the Mr. Nice Guy role, and they're really Mr. Nice, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and really everybody knows it but you. So then you're dealing with everybody's lying, but you're the one who's the target of the obsession, fatal vows, fatal obsession, or the foolishness, or the insidiousness, once the person realizes that you're not forgiving them for their BS. And a lot of times in a coaching situation, you're going to have couples that come in and will go through this. And with me, what I mean by you is I understood you. Most coaches, and this is for my coaches out here, you're going to have people that come in your office just as they will come in my office with this same pentameter, and they'll be talking about their husband, or vice versa, a wife, and you'll be listening to someone say, I hate my husband. And you're listening to somebody say this, and when did this happen? And you're listening to someone tell you from A to Z, X, Y, Z, three quarters and three fourths, how bad the person was. And once they get through telling you, you see why they hate them. You will understand as a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, or in the pentameter of a life coach, or if you're in a specialty niche, you realize why they hate their spouse, why they need to divorce. And sometimes you can possibly salvage it if it's not at the level of collateral damage or chaos or anarchy. So you have to ask these questions. Does the spouse want to provoke their partner? Are they sending the partner's vital signs up and down? Are they constantly at the point of threatening a stroke or heart attack? Are they constantly sweating, aggravated, provoked, gaslighted? Are they constantly in a level of emotional distress, aggravation, and at the level of snap mode with their partner? Are they at the level of nervous breakdown, which some people, they won't have a nervous breakdown, and some can be pushed to that. And it happens to even the best of people who are educated, have degrees. It's the fact, it doesn't matter about the degree, it matters about the emotional coping skills of dealing with someone like that. But as a person is dealing with a narc over years and years, they become used to it. So the narc will escalate and escalate and escalate. And that's what has happened in my situation, where I have a narc that would do that and insidiously still try to get underneath my skin even though we're no longer together. Those are things that do happen in relationships like that. They will continue to find ways to aggravate, agitate. And if you're talking about a tech guru, or you're talking about someone who has those MOSs or those areas of expertise, they will do that. Or if they're wealthy, they will hire people who will do that dirty work for them while they hide behind closed doors and sometimes come in and they're Captain Save It, but they're really Captain putting a knife in your back. And then they're trying to hoover you back. So then you're thinking about, are they trying to hide their real self from you? Are they actually overcompensating on Facebook, the nice guy routine, or I'm always helpful, I'm the decent person, when they're a whole sociopath? Then you're talking about like kids or work, but they make it seem like they're the perfect parent when they're just awful. And you have to think about that, but they'll make the good parent look bad in front of everybody, or set up provokings, or use the kids to do all the parental alienating or counter-parenting. That's what narcs do. But the good parent is not trying to do that. And what I mean by good parent, bad parent is that bad parent is going to use nice, nasty, while the good parent is still steady trying to parent the child and parent the child in pentameter. Oh, we're going to cohesively, collectively raise this child in a good tone. That is where, like, I've tried to raise my child with her father in that manner. So we try to co-parent along with his new wife. But when you have a counter-parent or other people that are involved in the parenting of a child who are counter-parent, and they will try to absolutely parental alienate and provoke and gaslight. So you're seeing, responding to their behaviors insidiously. And it takes, like I said in the last episode, a PI or someone to do intel to figure out that the good parent is the one who's being the subject or the target of the obsessive behavior, narc behavior, provoking, gaslighting behavior, or the emotional abuse or the torment, like messing with AC units, messing with the heat mechanism, messing with the actual coils, doing all kind of things to constantly provoke and elicit levels of upset, discomfort, and response. It was done to me while I was sleeping. Plenty of nights, messing with the AC unit, doing all kind of things to torture, provoke, and gaslight people. Even told the guy to stop messing with me, stop aggravating me, stop agitating me. He kept doing it. He would go and mess with my IP addresses. He's an IT tech guru. His dad's IT tech guru. They're both narcissistic sociopaths. They're just nasty people. And people like that who are well connected or wealthy or have money will do anything to go and change the narrative. Guess what? Gag is once the sheriff's department's son, and his daddy worked at the sheriff's department, IT background. So when you're dealing with something like that, you're dealing with an insidious level of internal BS. Then you're doing external BS to the actual person who is the actual target of their obsession or payback. And then you're talking about levels and depths. If you dealt with several Leo sons, they all hide behind their Leo connections, affiliations. And if you got a whole police department that's behind one of their own or one of their own son, then you have no chance in heck unless you get an internal investigation or inquiry. That's going to take a lot of money, a lot of time, and legal abuse that goes on and ensues. That's where you get the pentameter of neighbors that are willing to lie, or you will get people who will gang up on you because they want to shut you up. That's what I meant by economic abuse, environmental abuse, financial abuse, coercive control, or antics are well connected or well respected, or I'm a combat veteran, you're a combat predicate felon at line. And that's where it's a lot of those issues that come about in financial, economic, coercive control situations. You got to look at the person's ability to get these things done and insidiously do it behind closed doors or remote. Access computers and do all this kind of stuff. It happens in the digital cyber age. So those are things that doctors, lawyers, and things like that need to be educated on. And this is why I think there should be a charge on that, where the actual person who's doing all that and should be charged on the emotional abuse, the financial damage, and the levels of financial loss and coercive control that happen, and the insidious levels of emotional abuse that they elicit and harm the person. So we were talking about divorce and what are also good reasons. So like I said, when it's all about them and it's not about you or anything about us or we, when it comes down to it, if it's all about them trying to circumvent not paying child support, or them trying to keep from paying you out alimony, or, premarital assets or postmarital assets and they feel some type of way that you're not owed anything for the emotional abuse and harm, economic abuse, or coercive control, or years of damage or financial loss, or levels like in my case, I am a business person. This person affected business, affected my child, affected a lot of things financially, and I took a big L and a big loss. And you got to understand the levels and depths of loss to have to rebuild business after that was very long road. And a lot of people didn't believe what was going on until I had the receipts for days. And then on top of that, as a life coach and also health coach and a divorce coach, relationship coach, I'm telling you, it takes all of that for you to document these things, because they will go out their way to smear campaign, cyber stealth, cyber bait, cyber provoke. You're always saying reacting. What I meant by narcissistic abuse syndrome, reactive abuse, or for short, reactive abuse syndrome. You'll be sitting up there reacting, and you're being smear campaigned by his cronies, his narcs by proxy. Same example, prime example, Betty Broderick, who went through that, but she killed her husband. I'm not trying to do that. I just try to offboard and divorce this person emotionally, mentally, financially, sexually, and emotionally. Just literally leave the whole situation shit and literally leave. And just leave it, because for my mental health, my behavioral health, and my emotional health, I wasn't going to have a breakdown behind it. And I didn't want to get to the point that it's affecting me as a parent. And then when I saw how much it affected my child, it was one of those things that it's time to leave. Once you're affecting my kiddo, it's a wrap. It's a done deal. And most of the parents, I implore you, if you're going through divorce and it's affecting your children, and they're starting to feel some type of way, and they're starting to feel some levels of animosity, and they're acting out, it takes a lot to get them back to normal. And sometimes they're never the same. The most hurtful moment for me is listening to my daughter say, "Mama, you don't have to go and apologize for what he did. I know it's not your fault. I'm not the same." And her being so resilient and everything else, it made me cry. And to listen to her say I'm not the same because of what was done, it hurt me so deeply. And that's what convinced me even more to continue to separate, never go back. Because I had already separated, but the post economic abuse, financial abuse, provoking, gaslighting, I was willing to endure it so that she could go and off board from it and know that I'm steadfast. I ain't going back to that. I'm not going back to that. I refuse to. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty and the parts about how divorce coaching works, okay? So with this, it's parenting after divorce, and also learning how to co-parent after divorce, and learning how to divorce someone even if you have a long-term relationship. And this is for all the baby mamas and even baby daddies and those in between. And it's an introduction on how to parent after divorce, how children experience divorcing. And what I mean by divorce means emotional, physical, financial, and anywhere in between. Because when you're thinking about how it sticks to the body, and how make believe to a resolution, understanding children play a part in all of this, when you're offboarding, when you're separating, when you're leaving. Because when you think about it, the children are more important than anybody else in all the equation of this. Whether you're going to relationship counseling, whether you're going to divorce counseling, whether you're going to the post part where we're talking about the packages and whatnot for TeamWorld.online for the children, or for the other packages for family parenting, or you're talking about DonDiva coaching or IMCC coaching, you're talking about it's in the age of wonder, understanding how preschoolers feel, how middle schoolers feel, how high schoolers feel. Because no matter when you're divorcing each other, emotionally, physically, economically, financially, there is a casualty. The children, if there's children involved, or if it's ending up with yourself and that person, y'all don't have children, and whether it's dogs in between, whether it's anything in between, whether it's parents, everybody is divorcing. It doesn't mean just you and that person. Both of y'all are divorcing, and so are the other people involved. That's where it gets ugly. Then the discovery of self and understanding, 6 to 8-year-olds, and then 9 to 12-year-olds, and then above, your adolescents, your teens, your in-betweens, and your young adults. Because when you're talking about young adults who get in the middle of stuff like this, it becomes extreme levels of animosity and high hostility, because the kids are absolutely seeing everything, and they've been through all y'all's BS for a long time. Why I call it BS is because you forget and lose sight of the kids, and y'all's BS becomes more important than the kids. And this is why I can't stress enough. Let y'all's BS become a sideshow that the kids don't see. Because when they see all of the arguing, fussing, fighting, agitation, provoking, counter-parenting, and then all the provoke, gaslight, or vindictive resentment, the hostility, or the snide remarks, or saying things about the other parent. And this is why I always strive with my baby daddy when we first left each other, was to co-parent. I always invited him in my daughter's life, but my baby's daddy wasn't the problem. It was the adjacent relationships outside of him. Although our relationship, I'm going to leave it personal and private. It's none of y'all's business. But I wanted to give y'all that relationship value that I would have thought me and my daughter's father would have had more problems than we do. We don't. It's the people I dated after that subsequently were just terrible. And it became animosity ridden, hostility ridden. And in that, I share this with you because when a child is young and they're raised around someone for so long, in the offboarding is different because they still consider that person as surrogate dad, surrogate person that's in their life. And that becomes a level of different dynamics. And we're talking about a double dynamic of my two dads, or it can be my three dads or four dads, depending on how long your relationships last. Most of my relationships lasted a long time, long term, so it became common law or married. So at that point, you're talking about where people come in a life of a child, and if they have no intention of staying, it still affects the child. So that's why in our relationship coaching classes, we explain those dynamics where it goes, okay, one person, two person, three. All right, and then what are the people who are serial daters, where you constantly see them in relationship, and kids are starting to call everybody dad? You don't want that either. So I never wanted my child to ever call everybody dad. If they became a father figures because they played the role, or they did that long enough for the child to be comfortable with them and feel some type of like, okay, that's my dad, you know, and that makes it bad for the children. So with that, I want to go over why do couples divorce in the first place, or couples or marriages, why do they end up in divorce? And this goes into the why did I get married? Or why did I get with this person and stay with them so long? Why didn't I check out sooner? Usually because one or both partners believe that ending the marriage relationship will free them to create happier, emotionally healthier lives with themselves and their children, if they have any between themselves, or if they have dogs that they acquired together, or if they've done anything in between, acquired businesses together, they feel that they're happier. If it's not businesses that they acquired, or if they have economic things that they acquired, it could be properties. It doesn't matter what it is. If there's something that they feel happier that without each other attached to it, that's why they separate from each other emotionally, physically, sexually, and sometimes it's always a third party that usually ends up in the middle of that, and that adds another layer of hostility. And once you have the third party intervening, it becomes a whole nother nuclear level of, here we go, you know, and it becomes a, for lack of a better word, shit show. Level of, yikes! And then, and when you have those screams and everything else like that, because a third party comes in as a narc by proxy and stirs the pot and creates more hostility, then you have to put that narc by proxy in their place, and then it becomes, yeah, I see why he left her. Yeah. And then you're like, excuse me? So when you have to deal with that, then you have to learn how to deal with the narc by proxy. And I give you guys that pentameter of Betty Broderick of when she snapped on her husband, but then the other narc that was taunting touring with her, she snapped on her too. So then you're looking at a lady that needs a pardon and a commuted sentence because she literally snapped because the kids were used as a pawn. So then you really have a level of, you should have wrote down what was going on, should have had it doxed and things like that. She didn't have anybody that could advocate for her. He was a lawyer. So as we're writing this down, you're looking at all the layers of how far she's failed. Because she was a single parent, she was dependent on him, codependent on finances. That's what I meant by financial coercive control, financial abuse, and emotional abuse. Then when you've got a narc that won't sit down and know their place and stay out of it, then you have the levels of legal abuse, court cases, false witness, and things like that, people committing perjury. It's happened to me. And then you have the levels and depths of offboarding from that. And when you have narcs that are 6 degrees separated and then they know each other, you're adding another layer of animosity, and kids end up being a casualty yet again. So that's why people divorce or they separate from someone. And those are the objectives that we're going to go over on this. So I'll make it short and sweet. So in the quest for independence and understanding, you know, teens and 17-year-olds and things like that, 13 to 17, this is where we're tweens and in-betweens of being a young adult. That's where they're affected a lot. And also the young children, they're a little bit more resilient because they realize mommy and daddy don't get along, but mommy and daddy have to be coaching them to have those feelings. That's where you get those teens with the levels of hostility and animosity towards the other parent, if there's any animosity that's arisen, or what we call parental alienation, or PA. That is where that's not right. It's not okay. You should not be parental alienating the children when you're divorcing each other, whether you're married or not. Because there's no excuse for any parent, parental unit, or parental guardian, or anybody in between to parental alienate a child from the primary parent, custodial parent, or non-custodial parent. And there's no excuse for the labor of love that goes into parenting, the nurturing that goes into parenting, to be eroded by an adult who has it in for the other parent. That is inexcusable, and really it should be a chargeable offense, and you should pay for the time and the years of emotional abuse and harm that it elicits for the children, especially when children become adults and they carry the animosity. I speak on this because I don't want to speak on my clients per se and who my clients are, but I've had clients that have gone through this, and it actually affects them long term, the emotional harm and the abusive antics of the other parent primary that wants to stick it to the other parent or provoke the other parent. And this is what I meant by why there are good enough reasons to divorce, because of hostility, animosity, and parental alienation. And the challenge of change. And the please stop when parents fight. Because a lot of times you hear the kids, please stop, mom, dad, why are you fighting? Kids internalize that it's them. No, it's not them. Because I can tell you, it was never my child. It was always the other party. It was always the other party. It was always the argument started, always blaming me, and then turning around, coaching the kids. Oh, she started the argument. No, I didn't, because I don't like arguing. I don't like conflict. I'll solve the problem before I start one. But it will get to the point you want to tear your hair out dealing with them. Let me hit it one more time. And by the time you're up there with your hair pulling out and you're screaming, and you're just like, I'm not dealing with you anymore. Let's separate, because your hostility, your animosity, and your crazy make is just too much, and I'm not about to keep doing this. Let me do it one more. One more for the road. And at that point, you're just like,
finish him.
Mortal Kombat.
Finish him.
Finish him. And at that point, you have reached the point of anarchy. That is the War of the Roses. And once you reach that point, and if you have to compensate by either drinking or anything else to deal with them and their narc foolishness or their toxic sociopathy or levels of emotional harm and detriment, financial, coercive control, or abusive nature and antics or nomenclature that they will elicit or others that they will bring into the situation, to smear campaign, cyber stealth, cyber bait, cyber provoke, it will cause levels of, it will drive some people to drinking. You hear that? And you don't want to do that either, because you don't want to have what we call connecting the dots. And what was the S? The things of S, strategies or coping mechanisms that aren't good. Your strategy shouldn't be to drink yourself into oblivion to compensate or cope with what they're doing, because that drinking will lead to cirrhosis of the liver. I said litter. I guess the catty female thing. Yikes. So when you're dealing with a litter or gaggle of cackling hens and you have to go, yikes. You heard me? So if you have to pour a glass of alcohol or wine to cope with that, it's not good. I don't recommend it to anybody, because you can develop alcoholism or any other not healthy coping strategy, and that's not recommended. I don't recommend that to anybody. As y'all know, I'm a health coach and a wellness coach, and it's not going to help your mental health, your emotional health, or your behavioral health to cope in any other way other than getting a therapist and a psychiatrist, psychologist, getting some pills. And don't abuse pills either, and that's another thing we'll go into, what can happen from dealing with emotional abuse, provoking, gaslighting, and abusive behaviors by narcs by proxy, and others in between, or their families' abusive behaviors. Then you're dealing with pyramids of serious behaviors that become detrimental to the parent who's being targeted, the parent that is doing the obsessive, insidious behavior, narc behavior, sociopathic behavior, insidious provoke behavior, and then the kids and the parent that is trying to parent together cohesively, and the parent narc foolery and foolishness and the sociopathy that's causing you to pull your hair out. And you're at Mortal Kombat, finish him!
Finish him!
So at that point, you have really reached a point of animosity, hostility. You don't want that. So we've gone into those objectives as to why. And the first goodbye, that's when parent moves away or moves out or separates assets and anything else that becomes what they call key factors in higher hostility levels because of assets, things acquired during marriage, and then custody and visitation. You don't want to counterparent when it comes to visitation. And narcs use visitation as a means to provoke, gaslight, aggravate, agitate, and hostile reactions, and then they want to record your reactions, or they want to provoke and gaslight till you cuss them clean out, or they will do things like that to go take it back to court to counterclaim and countersue. They are the worst type of people. They are insidious provokers and they're manipulators. They're world class manipulators and they will do anything to sit there and reduce the validity of their what I call false claims or their levels and depths of harm or emotional abuse they elicit on the parent that they don't like, or they want you to come back to them so you'll drop cases, or you'll drop the actual valid cases that you may have against them, or things that they've done to you physically, emotionally, financially, economically, and done to you, but they don't want to pay up. And to the good parent or the parent that's not trying to counterparent, you don't want to offboard because of money. You're offboarding because they're affecting your mental health and they're absolutely causing levels of depths of harm to the child because they're using them for a pawn. It's no need for them to want to be around the child other than to get at you as the parent. And then one heart, two homes, parenting and child of divorce. And this is what I was talking about out of step 2, about all of that. Because you have to understand that when you're dealing with divorce, whether you're married, unmarried, common law, or anything like that, or you're dealing with an obsessed person, fatal vows, fatal attraction, fatal obsession, you're dealing with another level of foolishness that goes to the degree of causing trauma, PTSD, and levels and depths of safely offboarding. And the most dangerous part is when you're divorcing and when you're actually offboarding and leaving that person because the person wants to control the narrative of how they look to other people. And most of the time, the good person or the person who's not trying to be animosity or hostility ridden, but they end up hostile or upset, is literally just wanting to offboard and you to leave them alone. Or they're like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. You heard my voice. It's all cracking and terrible. So at that point, you're just up there like, I'm going to do it again. Just leave me alone. I'm doing it at the worst level I can. So at that point, you're just at that point and screaming. So at that point, you've gone to Michael Jackson, and not with a Michael Jackson overdose, by pill popping and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes the levels, the combinations of drinking and alcohol is not good. And I don't recommend that to anybody. Not that I've done that, but these are things that people do to cope, and it's not healthy. It is not healthy when somebody drives anybody to drinking or doing anything outside of that in recreational use, and that is not recommended. Not that I've ever done that, but I'm just saying it is not healthy. It is not healthy for anybody to resort to anything to cope with someone who has driven them to that. And people have done that, or they can be introduced to that. It is not a healthy thing. Just to cope with what somebody's doing, that means that person needs to exit stage left out of that person's life. They're not healthy for that person, and they're not healthy towards the parenting, and they're definitely not trying to make sure that the person is a healthy parent. Then on top of that, if you're dealing with a narc by proxy, they will do things such as wire your home. They will absolutely invade your privacy. They will also wire your offices. They will do things like that. They will go and do that to your car. They will use devices to do that. They will find ways to go and illegally win their cases and then sit there and tell lies on you because they've gathered false evidence. Those are things that we go over in our coachings and whatnot. So, how your parenting or how the non-parent handles the divorce or leaving the person determines a lot about how their children will fare both today, tomorrow, and in the future. And when you think about all these different things, how important is it for you to be healthy separating? Then, parents may not be a child development expert, but they are sometimes much better a concerned, conscientious, and loving parent who's willing to learn how to help their child cope with offboarding from mommy and daddy not being together. And when you think about those different things, you want mommy and daddy to be able to understand we're not together because we can't get along. We can't get along, and there's levels and pentameters of things that are just not acceptable in our relationship. And understanding that and wanting to deal with it and cope with it in the manner of that, for adults, divorce can be a representative of an escape from an unhappy or abusive in some pentameters a very abusive or emotionally abusive, financially abusive situation, a new world of challenges and possibilities, or a tragic disappointment, emotionally harmful, emotionally abusive, or tormenting, or a fresh start. And with that, when you're talking about emotional harm, we're talking about the levels of cost of divorcing or leaving someone and the torture or the emotional battery that stays with the person long after the divorce is over. And you're talking about the financial harm or the economic harm and the rebuild phase. And that's what they mean by a fresh start. You want a happy divorce, not a miserable, what they call emotionally abusive divorce or hostile divorce, high conflict divorce, and whether you're married or not, divorcing them emotionally, sexually, mentally, and physically, and not have being the casualty and ending up in somebody's nut house, and I hate calling it a nut house, but in somebody's institute, or somewhere at some adult sterilization unit, or somewhere having to see a doctor because you're dealing with that, or in my coaching office with a doctor, MSW, LSW, who has to unpack that before you end up in a stabilization unit because the person is driving you there strategically so they can make it seem like you're not a good parent when you are. So a lot of you people will be dealing with people like that because they're insidious. They don't care. You're a casualty and you're a target of their obsession, fatal vows, or provoking and gaslighting. And we'll go over those terms and abuse and things like that after we go over this session. Now, this is part 1 of 2, and then we'll go into abuse talk here soon about how that works and how narcs do this. And we've talked about this on Diva Talk Radio, but I want you guys to understand this through DonDiva coaching, how that really actually goes in depth and how far they will go to go and display you as an unstable person or unhinged, irrationally upset, or have other people provoke and gaslight you. So you're heard always responding, but they never elicit that I sat there and provoked you, I gaslit you, I lied on you, I smear campaigned you, I told people to lie on you, or I got people to gather around and congregate to provoke and gaslight you, and I elicited levels of angry responses that you legitimately, legally should be able to have, and honestly are justified in having because I've lied on you, one, I smear campaigned you, I cyber self, I cyber provoked, I baited you on and offline, I've taken it to every level of pentameter, smear campaign you, and not only that, I stole your life, I destroyed your image, your character, and I also smear campaigned you. They will fail to admit that to everybody else. The only people who know that is yourself, the kids, and anybody else who actually is closely connected to the situation or benefited from it. So then you're talking about 9-year-olds. At that point, 9-year-olds conclude that he or she caused her parents or his parents to break up and believe so far that for a year has spent more than a tenth of his or her life bearing the painful secret of what's been going on behind closed doors. And that is true because 9-year-olds to 12-year-olds genuinely feel like everything's their fault. And it's not their fault. You have to constantly tell them, it's not your fault. Your daddy and I just don't get along. Or if you're in a same-sex relationship, mommy and mommy don't get along. Or if you're in a same-sex relationship, daddy and daddy don't get along. Then you have to tell the kids, okay, we're not getting along and we just weren't getting along. It's nothing to do with you. But a good parent will say that. A parent that is counter-parenting will find a way to blame the other parent and find ways to smear campaign the other parent. You see, and play the martyr role. And that's not fair. That is not playing fair and playing on a playing field of healthily offboarding a child from the chaos that's already stressful that mommy and daddy are not going to be together, or mommy and mommy are not going to be together, or daddy and daddy are not going to be together. So with that, that's why I say it's mutually exclusive, no matter if it's same-sex or what they call traditional marriage or non-traditional marriage. And at that point, that's where the parents need to see the world through the child's eyes, and they need to see the world through how they're affecting the child through the child's mind's eye, and through an illuminated I am abundance mindset, and say I am going to be a good co-parent. I am going to cohesively offboard from this relationship. I am going to create a level of abundance even though I'm no longer there in the relationship, but we're going to have 2 households, and I'm going to create I am going to be a good parent whether or not I'm in the household or not. But again, a counter parent is not thinking in that mindset. All they're thinking about is how they can crush the other parent in court, or win all their assets and keep them and be selfish, or find a way to go and stick it to the other parent without any kind of illuminated I am mindset or any other mindset other than I'm going to cause the strife, economic abuse, financial abuse, and I don't care how far I take it. That is exactly what that parent's objective is. And then it's a fact that children suffer from divorce continually makes fresh headlines, and the skyrocketing divorce rate is not a recent phenomenon. After a sudden surge in the World War II, the rate had stabilized through the 1950s, and then in the 1960s began the consistent rise that began to level off in the mid to late in 1980s, but it surged again because if you look at the charts and things like that, you'll see that the raw counts of marriages and divorces that are justice per capita, and you'll see that it was a rise. Then it was a whole marginal level. Then it sloughed off. Then the curve went upside down. Then it went right side up. So economically, it just went to a point and went to the dogs at a certain point. In America, there's only one divorce approximately every 36 seconds. That's nearly 2,400 divorces per day, 16,800 divorces per week, and 876,000 divorces a year. And the average length of a marriage that ends in divorce is 8 years. So we're not even no longer making it to 10 years. And you know, the 10-year itch is at the 7-year itch, and most people are like, I'm out. You know, it's like Martin. You remember Martin on the show? And he was like doing that, and he slammed the door, peace. And at that point, they're just really at the point, peace. I can't stand you. I don't want to be with you. So then you're getting the levels of animosity pentameter of that, and now you see why the slough off. Then you have the upside down economics. Then you're looking at it at the point where you're going to the rise, medium, mode, and range, and then you're looking at it go down to the downward slope again, and you're seeing it go and rise again because we're at the 8-year mark where a lot of people's marriages are just in the toilet and they're in the trash because people are just no longer able to tolerate it, accept it, and a lot of people are no longer using religion as a means to stay married. And, you know, there's no reason for somebody to stay in a marriage that's no longer working for them and just for religious reasons. Oh, painstaking wife or martyr role or painstaking husband that's dealing with an narc wife. That's a different story, and we can go into that. In my case, if you have to look up what a narc is, you're not a narc. I actually had to look that up. And when I actually had to go through trauma therapy myself, I had to look those different things up to figure it out because I didn't know what I was dealing with. And it hit me, and the betrayal and the trauma of that was hard to deal with, and it was not easy because I was like, oh my God, this is what I was dealing with. And it hit me. It hit me so hard. I was like, oh my God, I was dealing with a narc. And when you say, oh my Glanta, I've been narked, it's the worst feeling in the world. You know, we have to laugh to keep from crying sometimes because we realize I've been narked. You know, and it's terrible. And it's the worst emotionally traumatic situation to go through. And when I decided to go into coaching, I wanted to be able to help you guys understand what it's like to deal with that. And then in these coaching things that I have to be able to do these things with you when I go on my tours. I want you all to understand. I understand. I get it. I want you guys to understand when I give you out your pamphlets, when you get these different workbooks, you understand this is not easy. It is the most painful, emotionally tormenting, emotional battering level of insidious abusive behavior a person can elicit when you're separating. It is the worst behavior that they can elicit by using kids as pawns. And then when you're talking about people who are wealthy, well-connected, they will go out their way to do it. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it because the selfishness lies within with that person. It's kind of like when you think about Star Wars, the stupid is strong within this one, or the narc is strong within this one, or the sociopath is strong within this one, or the fatal vows is strong within this one. It is real. And all jokes aside, you have to figure out how you're going to offboard from that person safely without being tortured, provoked, and gaslighted or seen always reacting to their BS. And this is what I meant by BS. Because facts are the average of every age of a couple going through their first divorce is about 30 years old. So most people have been married by 20 and they're divorcing by 30. So you're talking about that 10-year decade. And people change. And if you're not committed to being married, like I was actually committed. I wanted to be married a long time. I wanted to be with someone a long time. I wanted to be in a marriage that was healthy. And I wanted to be in a relationship that's healthy. I wanted to be in a relationship if I wasn't married that was healthy long term. It just didn't turn out that way. And when you're dealing with somebody that wants to provoke, gaslight, and play these games, whether they're wealthy, well-connected, or they have people that are in police departments or lawyer friends or doctor friends, you're going to deal with that. And they don't care. They don't care if they're going to lie on you because all they want to do is preserve their image. And when you're dealing with someone like that and you're offboarding from that, you have to think about your safety. You got to think about your kids' safety. You got to think about your kids' mental health, their emotional health, their behavioral health. And at the long run, I recommend that you always offboard with a coach, an MSW, LSW, and a psychiatrist, psychologist. Somebody needs to help you do it because you can't do it by yourself. There is no I in team. So we are here as a team at DonDiva Coaching. I am CC, my personal coaching, and Team coachingworld.online to help you with motivation and inspiration. Get out and do something. I am abundance mindset, so you can feel like I am going to divorce amicably. I am going to offboard the kids amicably. I am going to co-parent. I am going to have family relationship values, and I am not going to violate the code of light and illumination and being able to be illuminated and being a good parent, co-parent, and I will not counter-parent. And I am going to heal from my divorce, offboarding this relationship, and I am going to be a responsible parent, co-parent, and also be able to have two households, and it's two is better than one, even though you're together but separate. And in that, I want to close this out for you guys to understand 79.6% of custodial mothers receive support and award, while 29.6% of custodial fathers receive a support award. 46.9% of non-custodial mothers totally default on support, while only 26.9% of non-custodial fathers totally default on support. It depends on who's playing with finances and who's got control of the finances. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm not caping for mothers. If you're a mother and you have to pay child support, pay the support. If you're a father who has to pay child support, pay the support. Whoever has to pay it, whether it's 60-40, 40-60, it doesn't matter. If you can get to a point where both of y'all amicably decide that you're going to negate the finances and you're going to just definitely make sure you have a cohesive visitation schedule, and you guys decide, hey, we both got finances, we can both separate from each other, there's no need for all that, then you're good. But that means two parents that are willing to come to a care package for the children and understand that it's not about them, it's about us, our family, that we're separating together but separate, but we're together on our parenting with the child. So that's the reason why I said it's recommended to divorce for some people, because y'all are not healthy for each other to be staying together. You're healthy to be with other people. And if you're dealing with a psychopath, sociopath, they're not healthy for anybody. They'll just break the neck person. But you don't need to be dealing with that person and then trying to parent your child and they're counter-parenting every step of the way. So with that, I want to close out the session with a feeling of I am abundance mindset. You can heal. I am going to heal. I am going to set boundaries. I am going to co-parent. I am going to cohesively, not legally abuse. I am going to go and offboard my child, us, our children from this relationship. That's what a good parent will say. That is what a good parent will think in court, as well as when they're making the demands. It's all about the children, not about I. So with that, I want to close out with some good music, and everybody have a good day. I hope part 2 of this session was good for you guys, and y'all understand why coaching is good while going to a doctor as well, and getting the help that you need to offboard and be able to cope well, and also with the courts. We're there. So we are bridging that gap, and we put the precision in coaching. Have a good day.